Hello and welcome to Brooklyn Elected Officials. I'm your host, Assemblyman Nick Perry. For the past 14 years, I have represented the 58th District, which includes parts of East Flatbush, Canarsie, and the Brownsville. Today we will be discussing the hotly debated topic of congestion pricing and what it means to you. Joining me in the studio today are Dr. Cascya Charlot, graduate of Harvard Medical School, a specialist in the treatment of respiratory ailments, such as asthma. Dr. Charlot is a medical director of the Allergy and Asthma Care of Brooklyn. Also, John Falcocchio, director of the Urban Intelligent Transportation Systems, a center at Polytechnic University. Joe Chen, president of the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, and Sandy Webster, principal and marketing specialist of Consultants to Go. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Joe, what's congestion pricing? I know you are a very strong proponent of this, so tell us what's congestion pricing.
Sure. Congestion pricing is a strategy to do two things. First is to manage traffic congestion, specifically roadway congestion in New York City. The second major objective of the strategy is to generate proceeds or new revenues that can be used towards the enhancement of the city's mass transit system. Congestion pricing is a system that has been applied in different places throughout the world, including in London, in Stockholm, and in Singapore, and met quite a high degree of success, both in terms of reducing traffic and generating revenues. What's being proposed in New York City is essentially a charge to enter the Manhattan central business districts, which are, Midtown Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, and basically the areas below 86th Street. That charge would be $8 per day for individual cars, $21 a day for trucks, and would apply between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays.
Dr. Falcocchio, you are an expert on transportation systems, and do you buy into that? Is this what you think congestion pricing is?
I think, as Joe explained it, he laid out what the plan that has been proposed by the city consists of. Whether or not that plan needs to be modified to implement the concept focused on traffic congestion I have some questions about that, and then maybe because I really don't know how the plan came about. I just read the report that says here's what we're going to do. But the question that come to mind is, especially in the context of the law that the legislature passed, which requires to examine the overall problem of traffic congestion and then come up with alternative solutions to it, including the mayor's proposal. So in order to do that, it seems to me that we have to do at least four things. Four things are really needed to address that question in my mind. One is to really measure how much congestion is there, because this congestion is not uniform from 86th Street down to the Battery, and it's not equal in all parts of the city, so there are variations. And also, during different times of the day, you have different congestion, so it's important to really look at that, to learn how much the congestion is, measure it, and then the causes of it could be identified to follow that up. That will provide the basis to know how much we should reduce congestion by, because right now there is an $8 proposal to charge at $21 for, but it's a recommendations that has been internalized by those people who are looking at it. And since this proposal was just produced in April, very few people are really cognizant of the implications of this and what are the factors that are being addressed and so on. So that knowing how much congestion there is and then from there it says, well, we have to go from this level to this level, already helps telling you what strategies are really effective or could be effective in dealing with that, including congestion pricing. So the question then is, what must be done to achieve that level of congestion reduction, and how? And then the fourth part is, how are we going to pay for this? Okay? How are we going to pay all the improvements that are needed for that?
You raised some very interesting points, and we're going to get back to that. But part of the mayor's efforts to get this thing through involves what I would call a piggybacking on the need to reduce asthma, incidences of asthma in the city. And we have Dr. Charlot here, who is an expert in asthma. And so, Dr. Charlot, what's your take on this congestion pricing? And do you think that that might be a way to go to reduce the incidences of asthma among New York City's families?
Well, I will say that I am happy that asthma is getting attention, the attention that it deserves, because it has reached epidemic proportions in New York City. We know, for instance, that the incidence of asthma has increased by more than 75% since 1980, and that New York City children are 4 times more likely than the national average to go to the emergency room with asthma exacerbations. So there is a problem here, and we need to address this problem. We know that air pollution is something that exacerbates asthma. We know that fuel exhaust leads to the release of nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide, different particles in.
But is that the main, one of the main contributors to this increase in asthma?
Well, that's a good question, because I don't think, if you're going to ask me whether it's the main contributor, I would say no. But is it a contributor? I would say yes. And I think that because we're dealing with an epidemic, we need to look at all the contributors to this epidemic, whether they be big or small. And I think that no one would argue that pollution leads to exacerbation of asthma in asthmatics, and is something that we should try to avoid as much as possible.
Thank you. Sandy, you are a small businesswoman, and
That's correct.
I've learned that you don't like this proposal. What's your take on it?
There are parts of it that make sense, and then there are other parts that I just can't fathom, and maybe I need more, awareness and education of what all the components are. But as a small business person, I live in Brooklyn, my office is in Newark, New Jersey, and my clients are in Manhattan. And so I'm on the road all the time. My car is my livelihood, because time-wise, especially living in Canarsie, Brooklyn, there's just not an easy route, even if you use public transportation, of getting into the city. And so my car is for convenience, as well as making sure I get there on time. The part, I definitely agree that there is congestion in Manhattan. It takes you 20 minutes to come in. And
every New Yorker would agree with that.
So that's not something you can dispute. The pricing of it, I'm just not clear about, and I'm not agreeing with that, because that's adding to the cost of a small business. When we come in right now, we pay tolls. Parking in Manhattan is astronomical that you have to pay for parking rates. There's gas prices that have gone up, so you're already paying for that. And when you're adding an increased charge to the small business person, there's some people that are going to go out of business because of that. And it might be, $4, or as I understood it, you're deducting the toll cost from the $8 surcharge. So that's an additional $4. But to someone who has to come into the city all the time, that $4 per day adds up when you start making it an annual charge. And then I'm also not clear, the next guy, next to me that has an SUV, is he being charged $8, or is he being charged at the truck rate of $21? Because I have a little Honda Civic, and yes, there's pollution in my car. It's not as much pollution as the other guy. So how are you charging me commensurate to the other people who are coming in?